Jim Kelly. You won't believe what happened next. A guy who seemed built for the fringe of Hollywood walked away from the bright lights and lived the rest of his life on his own terms. Jim Kelly. Picture this. A kid from Paris, Kentucky, growing up in a place that still insisted on "for whites" signs and cold stares. He wasn't born into privilege. He scraped and trained and learned to move like a man who wouldn't be pushed around. Sports gave him a way out: football, track, basketball, even tennis, and an athletic scholarship to the University of Louisville. But one day, after hearing a coach use a word that had no place in any locker room, he packed up and left. No speeches, no fanfare. He just walked. That moment didn't break him. It sharpened him. Then karate found him. Not the flashy movie version, the dojo grind. Hours, sweat, bruises, discipline. Karate gave him structure and dignity in a world that kept telling him he didn't belong. He trained until he was unstoppable, and in 1971, he took the Long Beach International Karate Championship by storm, the only black fighter in the ring, and he won the world middleweight title. That win changed everything. Bruce Lee. A few years later, fate shoved him into the one place that would notice: a Hollywood set in Hong Kong. A supporting actor was dropped from a major film, and the crew wanted someone who could actually fight. Enter the room. A tall, calm man with an afro and eyes that could cut glass. He didn't act a lot in the audition: one line, a half smile. But that was his power. He wasn't pretending, he simply was. He got the role beside one of the most magnetic performers the world had ever seen. On screen, they sparked. Off screen, there was respect. But in the press, he was labeled, compared, framed. The Black Bruce Lee, a phrase that sounds like praise, but actually erases a person. He respected his co-star, but he wanted to be himself, not a footnote. Robert Klaus. After that breakout film, he could have ridden the wave, and for a flash, he did. He starred in his own film where he was the lead, not the sidekick. And he showed a swagger Hollywood rarely granted to black men then. Cool, unbowed, dangerous, proud. Audiences loved him. Black neighborhoods packed theaters to see someone who looked like them and moved like a hero. But Hollywood has always been fickle. When the blaxploitation trend cooled and studios pulled back, roles dried up. Critics labeled the films cheap. Politicians shifted the cultural mood. Suddenly, the projects that once made stars were dismissed, and the names attached to them were quietly pushed aside. So, what happened? Did he crash? Did he lose himself in drugs or tabloid mess? No. He said no to hollow parts, the stereotype roles with no soul, and that refusal was misread as trouble. Producers whispered that he was difficult. Directors passed his name over. The industry that had briefly celebrated him preferred actors who fit neat boxes. Rather than compromise, he turned away. Meanwhile, rumors did their usual work. Jealous takes, invented romances, phantom bankruptcies. When you vanish from the red carpets by choice, gossip will try to fill the silence. Some stories stuck because people wanted drama, but the truth was quieter. He kept practicing discipline. He stayed sober. He stayed proud. Then he chose a life that, to many, looked like disappearance, but was actually freedom. He found a new place to live out his principles. The tennis court. Tennis? Yes, the same focus, the same footwork, the same fierce concentration, just with a racket instead of a fist. He started competing in senior circuits, teaching kids, running a small club. On the courts, no one cared about your billing company, or which studio gave you credit. All that mattered was whether the ball cleared the net. He liked that. Fair play. No color lines, just skill. He married twice, loved quietly, and protected the parts of his life that were his alone. He and his wife built a private world away from the cameras. He didn't chase fame or headlines. He coached. He trained. He lived modestly. No flashy, gaudy displays, just discipline and dignity. When he finally died, it wasn't amid scandal or excess. It was quietly, from cancer, surrounded by family, the end of a life that refused to be a show. The obituaries that followed finally put his career into perspective. The man who stepped onto a global stage and then chose something truer to himself than unchecked celebrity. People went back and watched his films with new eyes and remembered the rare thing he gave the screen. A black man who was not a stereotype, who didn't apologize for being whole. Here's the uncomfortable lesson. Hollywood often rewards the shape that fits its narrow idea of marketable. When someone resists being carved into a convenient figure, they can be left out. But resisting can also mean refusing the small, hollow triumphs and protecting something deeper, a life you can live without pretending. He chose that. He traded more spotlight for more control. So why does his story matter now? Because the next generation still needs examples of people who walked away from a version of success that required self-betrayal. He became a quiet mentor, a coach, a teacher, and in those roles, he may have given more to real people than a string of box office hits ever could. To young black kids looking for role models, he offered something potent: pride, skill, and dignity. Not loud fame, but real influence. Let's be honest. It's tempting to measure success in followers, money, and awards. But sometimes the richest life is the one where you pick what matters and protect it. He chose to be more than a trend, and that choice made him timeless. So, what should you take from this? Fight for your dignity. Say no to roles literal or metaphorical that hollow you out. And when the world tries to label you, remember, you're allowed to define yourself. Fame is a tool, not a master. If you loved this story, stick around. We'll dig up more tales of people who walked away from the easy path and, in doing so, taught us how to stand taller. Like the video if you felt that kick of inspiration, and subscribe for more stories about people who chose integrity over applause. Want to hear about another overlooked legend next? Drop a name in the comments. Maybe it's time they got remembered properly.